And I think there's a snobbishness with reading books. They are a bit outdated. They're a little bit like playing the spoons and tap dancing and the theatre. They were good once, but things have moved on.
The head's not quite on the right place. That's his little issue that he's got to work on for the moment.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Look, I'm all for innovation, and I advocated putting a scrum half in the line out. It sounds great, but it's bollocks idea, really.
I still love that new intro. Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, a podcast brought to you by PRO14 Rugby, where we endeavour to deliver half-baked opinions served up as real authoritative rugby analysis. My name is Andy McGeady, and joining us tonight, it is almost for the last time, Mr. Dean Budd. How are you?
Buonasera. I've seen a good Italian fan straight in the comments, which isn't a norm for us. So, Forza Treviso, we're going to be making a comeback soon. 0-7, but just you wait.
We're big in a few places now. Paul Williams, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty well. Mr. Holley, how are you?
Yeah, I was okay till about 45 minutes ago when Man United started the first half. It's not going well.
I thought you were down when you came on earlier. I thought
2-0. It should have been 3. It's probably 4 now as we speak. So let's not mention it. Adam's behind the scenes. He's a red with me. But anyway, we're rugby, so I'm okay.
I don't even know what that sport you're talking about is. We'll quickly run through what we're going to be talking about today. Firstly, hello to everybody joining in. Michael Jenkins, hello from Premiership West Wales. Ian Gilbert, hello to all. Gareth McQuinney, Harley Worthy, Rugby Mon Glasgow, lots of regulars in. Autumn Internationals, or the Autumn Nations Cup, such that it was what we learned. Boyle shines for Connacht, but Glasgow undone by the Woodwork. We'll go through those two catch-up matches from the Guinness PRO14. Dwayne Peel moves away from Ulster Rugby. Where has he gone? We'll talk about that. After last week's Greg Garner segment, an amateur referee got in touch with me and wrote me something long, and I'm going to read out a little bit from that because I think it's really good to see the impact. The Baa-Baas, there was some judgment, 52 pages of judgment that I read today by their COVID breaches. I'm never getting that time back. The team of the decade from World Rugby-ish, we'll touch on that, and some very big news that came out this evening. Steve Thompson and a group of former international players are taking action with regard to what they would regard as the mishandling of concussion during their careers. We will talk about that later on in the show, and we do want to talk about it, so we're going to zip through this show fairly quick. Get your comments in on the side. We'll get to them if we can. Adam Redmond in the background, super producer, will be popping them in during the show. And I hope you're all going to have a lovely evening with us. Firstly, folks, we're big in Japan, very randomly. Yeah. This is weird, right? So somehow we've got massive traction in Japan. We're not really sure what's going on. If anyone wants to pop into the comment section and tell us what's going on, that would be good, but we have no idea whatsoever. Paul, you're the marketing dude.
Something? Are you coming out of retirement? Have you signed for like Toyota or something like that?
Well, I did a year in NEC Green Rocket, so I learned I was single at the time. I was taught Kumbonwa anata wa kawaii desu ne shukubi karikari.
Nice.
Which means good evening, you're very cute, and I've got hard nipples.
That's fantastic. There we are. Numbers have gone up again.
I'm not sure that's perfect, but it's pretty close, I think.
That'll do. That's very good.
Now banned in Japan, I think. Moving swiftly on, Japan didn't make it to the Autumn Nations Cup, but we did have games and we had a final. And the final was possibly the best bit of the Autumn Nations Cup. It was at least gripping and unexpected in what Paul Williams and what France brought to the party that day.
I thought it was a fantastic game. When you consider that France's, you wouldn't call it their second team, but it's their development team, isn't it? And they played at the same standard as the first 15, which is a very All Blacks way to be approaching the World Cup, with 2 squads of players who can just basically chop and change and play at the top level. I thought it was fantastic. It was weird to see Owen Farrell's goal-kicking claps. Don't often see that. But fair play, he pulled it back in the end, kicked them through eventually. But yeah, it was a fantastic game. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you don't often see a top drawer, and he is a top drawer test kicker, miss 4, and including one, which was, I mean, effectively right in front, a long way out, but right in front. Sean,
he took a smack early. He took a smack early on, didn't he? Sorry to interrupt. And you quite often see that with kickers. If they take a big knock early on, it sort of shakes their confidence.
It's I mean, it happens, doesn't it? It happens to the best of them, and you always get this. You get the layperson saying, change the goal kicker. Well, I'm not that level, but I was a goal kicker, and the psychology of a goal kicker is very, very important. Of course, Elliot Daly is in the team, and he strikes the long range one. I think he kicked the booty, didn't he? So, the pressure would have been on in many different ways, none more so than the scoreboard, which, you have to credit France, I think. And the way they play in the depth, we've talked about this before, about the depth of the 20s the last couple of years, but I still think there's more to come. I think you look at Jalibert, the 2 wingers, Raka and Villiers. I mean, Raka, all of a sudden, where does he get in?
Yeah.
I mean, Doolan has been mooted as one of the players of the Autumn Nations, and the back row. Well, crikey, they got guys coming off the bench who are good, and we've only just discovered, 1 or 2 in the Six Nations in the first team. So I think this is brilliant, by the way. I think it's brilliant. But my sort of caveat is, and I might upset a few English people here, is I don't think England are all everybody's cracking them up to be. I think they're underachieving. I don't think they're that great. I think they're probably just doing enough. I think if you had those embarrassment of riches, with European champions in Exeter Chiefs, just a plethora of back rowers now, a choice of outside halves, a choice of wingers and back rowers, should be doing a lot better. And I don't think they are, that, from my point of view. So I think they're shaky psychologically, I do.
Okay, so let's go into really round the table. What have we learned in terms of each nation? So, Dean Budd,
done England.
We've just done
England done.
We've kind of done France, because you're going, if you're French, you're really kind of excited, and a little bit fearful if you're from any other country in the world. Dean Budd, what is Italian test rugby learned?
If anything, it was a step, I think, slightly sideways and forwards. I think they unveiled Vanni and Garbisi as the probably future 9 and 10 of Italy, as real talents. And at 20 years old, they've got something to build on there. I think they showed glimpses of their attack finally starting to work. The deep attack that Franco's brought in, the passes were starting to be a little bit more on the money towards the end, so they could finally create those overlaps and scored a few more tries. I don't think we saw enough really to kind of jump on the Italy's back bandwagon, but I think there was little glimmers of promise and light, and fingers crossed they can start putting in consistent performances for the Six Nations coming up.
Paul Williams.
They were in games, sorry, and they were in games, weren't they?
Yeah,
think about it. They were in the Scotland game for long periods. They frustrated England at some point. They were in the game last week against Wales. I think it could be a lot to do with the depth coming off the bench, maybe. Not used to being in that sort of position, and maybe some of the young players froze a little bit. There's certainly, I see, you're right, maybe a diagonal upwards rather than it's
certainly in times I've been very quick to jump on the accelerator and push it. Hey, we're in, and we're going to win next week, and we get pumped by 40, and so I'm very hesitant to go ahead and say, Italy's back and they're competitive, but they are competitive. Someone just popped up in the comments saying Zenon. There were more than one really good sparks in that team, and to see some real spark in the back line, some X factor. It's a little bit exciting, but there's still a lot of time and a lot of things that need to be developed.
Yeah, and Jake Polledri's knee, we wish it all the best.
Yeah, poor guy.
Love him.
Are there glimmers of hope for Wales, Paul Williams?
Yeah, I think they were. Sean won't agree with this, I don't think. But in the set, I think the defense, they obviously showed after they've changed the defensive system and got Gethin Jenkins involved, that worked, because the last 2 or 3 games, they looked a lot more solid defensively. So I don't know what was happening in the first 2 weeks, but that change has worked. I think the big thing for me in the last game was just that Faletau is back to his best. I mean, that's one of the best 8 performances I've seen in a long time from anybody on the weekend. The way he slips around those tackles and gets out to those soft shoulders, I thought he was fantastic. Tipperick was amazing. And together, I mean, you don't often see 2 back row forwards peaking in one game at the same time. So to see them back to back with each other, I thought that was fantastic. Overall, I think the centre debate's a big issue for Wales. Those combos haven't moved on at all. I think we were hoping we'd see at least 1 or 2 names come forward, but I don't think we really know anymore. But Nick Tompkins, Johnny Williams has moved forward probably, but I don't know about the rest of it. But at least the rot is over. I mean, at least that dreadful run of losses is over. They've got a couple of wins, and now it's on to the Six Nations. So nothing massive to report, but I think the big panicking's over.
Holly, you can have a right to reply on Wales before you get to Scotland.
I thought Paul's summary was astonishingly close to the mark for him. You know, I'm not going to chastise him or have a go at him. I think he's right. He failed to mention a few things. The set piece is a massive worry. We're not winning enough of our own ball. We're in the referee's minds about our scrum. I agree defensively we have improved, and that will get better as Gethin gets more comfortable. But we're still not really creating. We look creaky against Italy when that try went in the corner. But I agree on the centres. What's happened to Nick Tompkins? Backwards in the pecking order.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, George North coming in. The big one for me, and I'll just finish on this, is that, yeah, all right, he's been trying things, but trust me, he would have been desperate to get wins as well, because that's international rugby. And I said it before, it's all about selection. And the old tombola was out. You know, every week he was winding the tombola, and this week number 13 is, congratulations, George North. You can't get it. Dean will tell you can't get any combinations, any continuity, any confidence in each other. And I think that's a big learn for Wayne Pivac. So I think Six Nations, he can't tinker like that. Otherwise, we're going to get spanked. Blues away, England, Ireland home.
Okay, Steve Lewis jumps into the comment section. Wales are likely to reap the benefits of experimentation come the Six Nations. Thoughts, chaps? Well, that's always the old thing.
That's
if
a lot
it works further down the line, you'll point to this and say experimentation works.
Well, the worry is, we got no games now till the Six Nations.
Yeah, they've not got time to do those combos.
You know, next up, Bush, in you go. And as I said, we're not going to beat France away. We're going to struggle to beat Scotland away, because I think they show glimpses of improvement. Yeah. Italy will have a look at that now and think, well, do you know, we were in it for large periods. Why not? England, Ireland at home. Well, come on.
Right. So Scotland away, let's go. What have Scotland learned from this Autumn Nations Cup?
Who wants it?
Yeah, no, Holly's getting it.
Okay.
Am I?
Yeah, you're right.
Scotland, again, Scotland just have to believe, I think. I think Scotland play for large periods like they're world beaters, you know, as we saw on the weekend against Ireland. You know, Duncan Taylor in the centre, Stuart Hogg when he's forced to counter-attack. Oh, my God, bang, he breaks the line. You know, obviously they miss Finn Russell, haven't they? You know, that's a big one for me, Finn Russell. I think their forwards are what they are. They're industrious, they work horses, and they'll do enough. But they need that sort of general to steer things and then do the mercurial things that sparks everybody else. So I don't think they're far away. I think they're far away. I think they're going to be really competitive in the Six Nations.
Yeah. So we're missing one. We're missing one team, which is Ireland. I get that one. That was really depressing as someone who likes Irish rugby to do well and to play good stuff, because it took Ireland until the second half of the final game to click into some sort of gear. And I know Ireland put points on Wales at the start, but it was still a poor game and a phenomenally poor Welsh performance. It really was. And I think you need that context. The context of the Georgia game is really important. The context of how Ireland played against England, not England's defensive performance, but how Ireland didn't have any other plan than to simply play into those very big English bodies. That's the bit that concerns me as an Irish rugby fan. So people can talk about experimentation and you should have thrown more players in. There's a lot of good players still in there. And I think the jury's out. But we will see. It is a long time till the Six Nations. And that's going to be all we talk about. Other than it was great to see Fiji.
God, good.
Fiji's amazing.
Great.
Right?
See,
And you know, and that whole
defenseman
debate,
try scoring.
and you know, and that whole debate about is it too much kicking? Are the defensive lines too tight? That's because we didn't get to see Fiji for 5 games. You know, if you'd have had Fiji and Japan in that competition, it would have been different. Japan play with a really weird pod system where they can do what they like across the whole field, and Fiji just will do whatever they like at any given time. So, you know, that whole kicking thing, that's why you need these other teams. They break up. They are part of the rugby tapas, aren't they? You need bits of everything.
They kicked the
Very
ball,
well
though.
put.
You know, Fiji kicked the ball.
Yes, they did kick the ball. Yeah,
You know,
sure.
Georgia kicked the ball. Georgia scored some good tries, by the way.
Yeah.
So I was quite harsh. Well, the only thing on that is that Georgia play all those games, get a battering. Fiji play once and finish above them in the table.
No, it's horrible. No.
Steve Lewis, quick question. Did any team advance their cause during this tournament?
I think Georgia did. I think Georgia. I know they didn't. You know, they're not exactly going to overtake Italy or whatever in that sort of level of consideration. But I don't think they were embarrassed at any stage during the entire competition. I thought that was actually a reasonable start. People may not agree with that, but I think
an answer. Did any team advance their cause during this tournament? Argentina.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that
you
tournament.
win. You win.
Yeah, you did. Good answer.
I mean, Fiji to perform after whatever 5 weeks of quarantine, I really didn't think they were going to survive 20 minutes out there, and they've gone and been just rock stars like they are.
And a year since their previous game.
That's such a good description.
It's pretty good. Welcome, Chiefs girl, to the comments straight in.
Yeah.
We will. There's one thing we're not getting to this week. We're not going to spend much time on the Champions Cup. We will have loads of that next week because we'll be between rounds. Okay, so apologies in advance. We're not going to get there, but we have plenty to do. Right, for the comment section, and actually those on the line with me, your question before we get to the Pro 14 stuff. How long has it actually been since the Dragons won 2 games away in a row? Okay.
I think the British Isles was still connected to the European mainland. So I don't know how long ago that. When was the Cambrian event? 250,000 years.
I think it was before.
I'm gonna have an educated guess. In the first year of Welsh Regional Rugby, 2003-04 season, the Dragons actually finished. I think I'm right in saying the top Welsh region, right? Under Mike Ruddock and Clive Griffiths. I'm going to go for that season.
Got to be at least.
I'm going to say that.
I'd say 10 years.
I'll go 2011 because I arrived in 2012 and I don't remember them ever doing that. And that was the second year of this the Pro 12 or whatever. So I reckon Adam's got can only go a stat from 2011.
I have a funny feeling I'm going to split the difference because they had a sneaky season at one point where they weren't. I'm going to say somewhere around 08, that kind of thing. I'm sure we'll know. We'll find out when we get to it, right? But pop in there in the comment section. Howell Davis, 08, Fog Dragon, 05.
Fog Dragon sounds like he knows.
Yeah, Fog Dragon's been on Google.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of delayed games. It was a mini round of the Guinness Pro 14 last weekend while the Autumn Nations Cup was finishing up, and we had Connacht playing Benetton in 2 non-normal kits, which we will get to because one of them was good. It was that big bright yellow kit. Dean Budd, I think we got a winner.
Yeah, when I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked when I saw it because that's a new sponsor. We used to have the bright orange because it was Cofferlock, and they've now sold out to some other big brand who's apparently yellow. So now all our second jerseys are bright yellow. But I think that's pretty. That's pretty to see.
I like
if we're not winning, at least look good.
that's clearly a Claremont versus Ospreys game from about
No,
6
You
years
know,
ago.
it is. It very, very much so. So it's a 2010
Yeah.
Ospreys Claremont European Cup match, yeah, which we would win at home and they would win away.
Or a Hurricanes pre-season match against I don't know who. But I like that kit.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's good. And there are a lot of away kits, change kits on show right now. And as I was taken to task online earlier on the week, in the year where there are no income streams, have at it, lads. If you want to be selling jerseys, so do you know what? I'll take that one. So Dragons won up in Glasgow, but Paul Boyle really impressed in that win against Connacht, and we're going to get some of his play there. Sean, lead us through some of this.
Well, you know, he's just another one available. This guy always performs well for Connacht. You know, if you haven't heard of him, any of our listeners, Paul Boyle, watch out for him. High number of carries, big work rate, turnovers, tackles in particular, and can play at 6, play at 8. I interviewed Andy Friend for Guinness PRO14 in the first lockdown, and he spoke really highly of this fella. So he's obviously invaluable to the team, and to have him available around this time, he just shows in games like this. Look at this, what an athlete. He's a big lump, he's quick, he's explosive, good line-up forward. I mean, it's just what he wants this time of year, isn't it? And he's done the business there. He's a point of difference in this game, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that try there, Treviso down to 14. It's just clever, isn't it, to spot the wing missing and then go around the corner. And I did a quick look at his stats. He was up at about 5 meters a carry, which I think is always good as an 8, isn't it? Because you don't get any big cheap carries like fullbacks and wings where you can just like get a 20 in for nothing. So, you know, if you're up near a 5 for an 8, I always like that.
God, I think that's massive. A 5.
Huge,
if you're netting 5 meters a carry, that's huge.
Yeah, he played really well. I was really impressed.
Although, if that first try, I've never. I mean, God,
that shouldn't be scored, mate.
No, it shouldn't.
I was going to say that. I'm glad you picked that up. That shouldn't be scored. It's wow, God, it's unforgivable, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
He just picks up and walks over.
3 blokes. It sums up the Benetton season so far, but that's just unacceptable. There,
it's like a try from the 80s, isn't it? Like you don't see defence like that anymore, do you? From first phase, where they just stroll over from a scrum.
That would be your theory of Chelson of Kobe off the back, but Jonah against a couple of little kids from Kataranga and just walk over them,
strolling through.
Yeah.
So that was Paul Boyle, player of the match and the first Connacht bonus point in a first half since 4 years and 1 day ago against
Benetton.
Oh no! Oh yeah, I forgot you said that.
I'll be honest. The commentator, I can't remember who it was. There was 36 minutes gone or something. He's like, yes, there's another 5 points on the scoreboard for like on the championship board. They had already called out that Connacht had won the game after about 35 minutes, which they did. Full credit to him. But I was like, he's really ridden Benetton off proper here.
He's going for it.
Yeah.
You're going, listen, there are rules. Don't call the game till at least the second half. Come on.
Yeah.
At least they've swapped the front rows.
So, yeah, not a great start to the season for Benetton. That continues. And we're not going to plow into that in depth today because it's coming up to Christmas. And Dean has to get out of Europe alive, right? Yeah. So, Dragons Glasgow in Glasgow turned very, very interesting.
Jeez.
Okay, very interesting indeed. And we have a few things to get to in this game, right? So, firstly, let's get to the really slick bit, which was the Jared Rosser try. Line that up.
Yeah. Last week we showed some first phase tries, didn't we? Lovely line out ball, you know. You can see they've been working the movement, they're all in sync. It's a lovely inside ball. And that right from about 25 meters, he backs himself. Yeah. He's got Matawalu there, you know. And he just put the burners on. He's a good player, he's underrated. He does score real good tries, but it's all in the creativity of the first phase, the flow of the movement. Look at this now. Lovely little show inside to the back to Ellis Ship and the hooker. Then Jared Rosser has to come sort of 45 degrees blind. And now this week, remember I asked last week for the outside backs to follow up? Watch him now. They're coming through the line now. You know, they're still a little bit behind, but at least 13 is there with him. That's a high tackle, by the way. But it's a great finish. They credit Gordon Ross and Barry Maddox will be doing their first phase stuff. You know, Mevin Davis with the line out, the throw in. You know, all those under coaches doing their job. And, you know, as it showed at the end, it was needed. Those sort of precisions, those 1%, the half holds, the little show, the timing of the run, it has to count. So, you know, really pleased for them. You know, they're exciting to watch the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Can you,
do you know the big thing as well? Sorry.
No, Paul, you go. They want to hear you, not me.
All I was going to say is that the underrated thing in that move is Jamie Roberts, because he causes so much panic as soon as you see that lump flying down. You're just thinking, "Oh my God!"
It's the show inside to the hooker, which nobody sees, right? But that just holds a little bit, and then there's a knock-on effect. Jamie come in, everybody sort of goes, "Well, he's getting it. It's Jamie Roberts," so it just fixes them a slight moment, and as soon as you turn your eye from Rosser on the inside to, "Oh, here comes Jamie Roberts," that's where you get blindsided. Yeah. And if he comes on that 45 out of your eye line, you can't recover and get back. So it's the detail. It's really good.
Beautiful thing that was.
It really is.
Did Manuelu get carded for that? Because it's actually outrageous. The more times you look at it, he just jumps up with his neck and swings around.
I don't think anything happened on it, did it?
Yeah, I think I heard the ref say that there was an advantage for high tackle or something like that, but I think Happy Days try was scored.
An advantage. I always get a little bit annoyed about those when something is clearly wrong, but because a try is scored, the officials completely forget that they ever thought of it in the first place. Yeah, Manuelu, he took out a taser, but he scored the try anyway. It's grand, you know.
Yeah.
But that was one good bit, right? Then it was looking, as you know, for 20 minutes left. You're going, this is actually getting very excited. This is on. And then we got to the very end, and this happened.
Well, do you remember we talked a few weeks ago about Danny Wilson? I spoke about this, the third set piece. So rather than go for a scrum or go for a line out, they take a tap penalty and they work on it. It didn't take a lot of construction, to be honest, because they went quick and they got over. But prior to that penalty, we can see the steam.
It's unbelievable.
Phase after phase, and credit both teams because they retained the ball. The Dragons stayed disciplined because they knew. But it was just, I was loving watching it. I got to be honest, it was brilliant to watch. And then that wasn't the end.
One of the scrums looked like a jacket potato that had just come out of the microwave. It's the only way I can describe. It was. I nearly put it in my column this week. I thought people aren't going to want to read that, but it just looked incredible.
Well done, Wills. That's you've just taken 28 minutes. That's a record to mention your column.
Got to get it in. Got to get the numbers up. I don't get the clicks.
So what did that put it at? So that was fairly close to the posts, not in front, but fairly close. And on a plastic pitch, you're going, game over. Then it gets weird. Then it gets weird. Okay.
What?
So
explain why he's just standing there. He just thought he would.
I'm going to get to that, and it's actually smart, right? So let's describe what Dean. You talk over this. What's happening?
Well, I mean, the game's finished, and you've got to do the classic run as hard as you can to stop Glasgow from winning a must-win game here. I mean, it's a one game for them. No one.
So what we've had a player stand right in front of the ball as Glasgow trying to take the conversion, right, which is a gimme, and then when the run-up actually starts, there's a run-up, and then the next time, he hits the post. And the Dragons players hadn't charged because they weren't allowed, because you can't do it twice. And there's a lot of celebrations from the Dragons. There's, who's talking to him? Jamie Roberts comes over, big bear hug. Listen, you'll have better days, mate. It's a really rough one, but tell you what an end to the game.
Brilliant game.
You didn't wish that on anyone, do you? And I think you wouldn't have minded so much had it been 22-all at that point, because the game probably it deserved a draw. I tweeted it. It didn't warrant a loser. But you got to. if I'm sat in Dean Ryan's chair, Rodri Williams confronts, first of all, stands over it. Dean's been a captain. It's clever play, it's cheeky. All the while, the guy.
Why is it? Explain why. So I'll go backwards, right? So on the final conversion attempt, the Dragons players were not allowed charge, right? They were not allowed charge because they were warned by the referee because they charged illegally the previous time. They probably bolted early or whatever, right, to put up the player.
Yeah.
Now that's why Roger Williams does something different. What is that, Sean?
What, standing over the ball?
Yeah.
But because the longer he stands on that kick, the harder it gets.
Yeah, the nerves just ramp up, don't they?
It's like the Bruce Grobbelaar doing the knees on the line, isn't it? It's like coming up to the ref. It's putting the ball on the spot. You put the ball on the spot yourself. It's all those sort of things. The kicker, he just wants to kick. He's done this a million times. He do it with his eyes closed, but he just wants to kick it as quickly as possible. But then all the skullduggery that's going on, that time elapses. He's got more time to think about it. There's chit-chat going on from the line. You can imagine. The ref's in his ear. And then Rodri stands. It's classic sort of sledging in cricket, isn't it?
It's getting colder by the second.
I don't know if any of you guys
feet were when he was kicking
follow NFL. It's for the 1-pointers or the penalty kicks. They just as the kicker's about to kick the ball, the opposition coach calls a timeout. So he actually gets the kicker and he sees the kick generally go over that first time around, but that doesn't count. Reset, got to start it again. I'd say he's a big NFL fan, I'd say, because that's textbook NFL and mind games.
It makes you realise just how important the top 2 inches are, doesn't it? Even at that level now, you think that he probably doesn't even practice kicks from there because it's a waste of balls. Isn't it? It's pointless kicking that when you've got to go and someone's got to kick it back to you. I doubt he even practices that kick. It's so close.
The best thing he could have done, right, hindsight and all that inexperience, is turn his back, walk away, go and get a drink, talk to the kicking coach or his fellow players, whatever, let the ref sort all that out. But of course, it's the last thing you think of. Those things don't normally happen in a game. No. Christian Hyde has said, was it ungentlemanly conduct? Well, probably it's gone right to the line on that. Yes, it has. And therefore, the referee should maybe administer some sort of, sanction. But he can't, can he? Time is up.
I don't think there's a sanction there. No, that's why
he could yellow card Rodri Williams, but so what? He's probably thinking, I don't care if I get yellow carded now. If it puts him off,
exactly. It's like we used to see goalkeepers on a penalty. They'd pick up the ball and they'd bring it right up to the penalty spot and they'd stand there. And the idea was to get into the player's head that they would literally fill the frame of the goal walking back, so the goal would look smaller.
Yeah, the old.
and like Sean said, the really smart players would just turn around, walk away, and come back when they knew that goalkeeper was actually back in their goal again. It was really smart play by Williams because that didn't count as a charge. Now, if you're a referee and you've seen that done once, and you see another team try it, I think you're going to have a word with the captain and say, you're not allowed to charge this kick, my friend. It was shithousery. Let's call it what it is.
But the solution.
That's all it is. The Dragons.
The solution to it is if you do something of that twice, they give you the conversion.
Yeah,
that's the solution. Just go right. That's that.
Well, so we haven't mentioned Brandon Thompson will have better kicking days.
He's a good kicker. He's a good young player, and he's a good kicker. He's had good days. But you know what? On the flip side, again, with my coach's hat on, it's nice to see the Dragons fight tooth and nail to the end for the win. They're desperate for that win. Anything goes. You want that in your players, and that's a bit of Dean Ryan coming through as well.
They looked like they'd won the World Cup.
And it was really nice seeing
they all jumped in the air, fully steamed up.
And that's where you guys like Roberts, guys like Richard Hibbert, who've had huge wins in their career, for them to be in that, you can see how important that is, even from a long way away. You can see the impact. Now, when was the last time Dragons won 2 in a row away from home?
Oh, here we go.
Come on. March 2012.
I wasn't.
The 11-12 season, like I said.
I'm 9 years old. Do you know, somebody mentioned around about 2011 it was, and the Tommy Turner, Paul Turner. We won. I was head coach of the Ospreys from about 2008 to 2012. But in the 2010 season, we won the Magners League at the RDS. Have I ever told you about that? But
Yes,
anyway,
you have.
so we go now to the end of season. Guinness Magners League, sorry, whatever it was, awards. And there's the Coach of the Year award, and I've been invited, and I'm sitting there thinking, there's a lot of good coaches in this league, there is, but I'm in with a shout, we've won the league. It would be lovely to have on the TV, and I'm thinking, right, okay. I'd coached Wales the year before. Warren Gatland had picked me as to be a coach of Wales on the North American tour, and then they announced, and the coach of the year this year has been chosen by Warren Gatland. I'm thinking, I'm in with a shout, and whoever was presenting said, and the winner is, for a fantastic season, by their standards, finishing 7th, is Paul Turner of the Dragons.
Oh no! Oh no!
My one shot, really. My one shot at it.
Oh man,
Cheers,
that's awful. Cheers, Gav. We hope you lose a Lions tour.
I'm just glad you're over it. Clearly,
I'm over it, and I'm sure I'm over it. I'm just gonna have a hip flask shot
straight in.
Right, we're zipping on. We're going to go to Dwayne Peel. Dwayne Peel is moving from Ulster Rugby to Paul Williams. Where's he off to?
He's off to what I would rebrand as Cardiff. No, I'm joking. He's off to Cardiff Blues. I think it's a fantastic move. You look at Ulster this season; they've scored plenty of nice things in the back line, and
we even spent a lot of time talking about nice Ulster play last week.
We spent a good 30 minutes.
Actually, I've spent quite a lot of time talking about Ulster,
and I have so many you,
week in, week out.
I'm flat out in my column, the Ulster section. But I think it's a really good move, because I'd say Dwayne Peel is in that little section of coaches underneath, about 3 or 4 of them waiting to come through, looking for big senior jobs. And, we're always looking for development pathways for Welsh coaches. Everyone's always complaining about we're not using Welsh coaches. Well, as a Welsh coach who's doing really well back in the Welsh region, so it ticks a lot of boxes.
There's a lot of talent at the Blues. With a talented coach, could do a lot of good things there. Ian Gilbert, why announce Peel's move now? Sean, how does coach hiring work?
I don't get this at all. I get to bring Dwayne Peel back. I do. Good young coach. I had him coaching under me at Bristol. Don't forget when he was cutting his teeth. Still got a long way to go. But yeah, you're right. Ulster have been playing well. Hell of a squad, by the way. Some cracking players. But it's I've got some issues around this that I'm working through, right? So I might come back to this next week. But
does that mean you in for the job?
No, not at all. Oh, absolutely not. That's my point. There wasn't a job, right? That's my point. There wasn't a job. So this stinks of a couple of things that I've got to get to the bottom of. And the first is there's a head coach there who seemingly isn't doing any coaching. I don't know that for a fact, but a head coach and an attack coach in Richie Rees, who's a really good young coach, been coaching longer than Dwayne Peel.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, their attack hasn't been functioning. It has and it hasn't, but there's other reasons for that. So all of a sudden now, Dwayne is a very similar type of coach to Richie Rees. So what's all that about? Is that needed? What's going to happen to Richie? And if you're a head coach, if that's your title, you've got to coach. You've got to get your tracksuit on and coach. If you're a director of rugby, you direct the other coaches to do the stuff, and if you want to coach certain parts, you do that. But if you're a head coach, you coach. So I don't know where this fits. Something has to move for me.
Yeah. Okay. So there might be another shoe dropping somewhere, which we will find out.
Or it could be that they do move the head coach up into a DOR role, but not that doesn't really happen at the Welsh regions, does it?
And that will be a real interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick. So we're now basically paused in Guinness PRO14 world for a while. We'll come back Christmas weekend. going to be some good games. I'm looking forward to it. We spent a bit of time last week talking about the conferences. Briefly, Ulster, Leinster flying. Ulster 38 points, Leinster 35 points at the top of Conference A. Conference B, Munster out front with 32 points. Connacht on their own in second with 20 and a game in hand. So looking good for them, nice and tight in Conference B. We move on. Referee Greg Garner, elite ref chief of the Guinness PRO14, with a good segment and a good chat with him last week, which seemed to go down really well. I got some good feedback on that, saying it was good to get that kind of insight, including one referee, an amateur referee in Ireland, who got in touch with me and wrote to me at length.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
Honestly, two pages. It's really nice, really nice. I want to just, if you will bear with me, read out a couple of things to illustrate what being an amateur ref is like. Because maybe to some people, the ref just rocks up and they're just somebody with time on their hands. But no. So in this referee...
He's still there.
Yes,
He's not watching
of course, the
Man United.
referee
He's
will
still
write
there.
at length.
That
Yes,
is
you're right.
quality over quantity, that is, Redmond. I like that.
So in this amateur referee's seventh season, I was put into a development group to get me up to level 3 standard. That involves more workshops, more assessments, and video analysis on your games and tests of your law knowledge. Now, this is amateur stuff. I was delighted in that year to get my first J1A game and to be officially moved up to level 3. It only took 200 games to get there. So you can see why I was a bit irked about comments, and you referred to it earlier. It had been a serious effort for me to get to where I was on that day, where someone came up to him after a game and said, well, listen, look, you basically wasted a lot of these people's time who've come out 2 teams to play rugby and the coaches and whatever else. Even at this level, the level of preparation that the refs put into staying at the level is not to be sniffed at. A typical match week for me will be an match appointment given on a Wednesday. And as I'm self-employed, I'll sort out my working week around that match. I try to get 2 to 3 cardio workouts each week, sometimes doing a schools game as well. And it will surprise you to know we can cover 5 to 7K in a game. And I'm going to skip ahead just to this bit. It can be a very lonely occupation. You train on your own. You travel to the game on your own. You warm up on your own. I said earlier we ignore the sidelines, but it doesn't mean we don't hear what's said. At times it can be caustic and nasty. Others it can be humorous. Why anyone believes they have the right to abuse a volunteer because we don't get paid is beyond me. So here I am in my 9th season. Over 300 games under my belt, still going strong. One thing I'd say to all players, coaches and supporters: we're human, we make mistakes, we have feelings. We try our very best we can to be fair and consistent, and it doesn't take much to make us happy. A kind word after a game, a handshake and an offer of a cuppa goes a long way. I was going, do you know what? That's heart in the sleeve. That's just one ref's story from the mid-amateur levels. And I said I wouldn't use his name because he asked me.
Doesn't it make you feel it was worth doing that show and having Greg on just for that?
Yeah, for one. Yeah, it does, yeah.
Genuinely did. And he said he was really interested, to see that people might know that referees can get promoted and demoted because their games get analysed even at his level. So not going to go into that. If you didn't see that segment or listen to that segment, go back and listen to Greg last week. It was actually really good.
How did he feel about Dean saying that he wanted a set of referees gallows put outside World Rugby office and hang them straight up?
It was just a question. I'm a voice for the people. It doesn't in any way reflect my opinion. I'm just passing things on.
Yeah,
Mob Rule brought to you by Dean Wood. Speaking of judgments, the Baa-Baas judgment is out today. If you want a long read and if you're of a mind, there are 52 pages of official legal judgment handed down to the 13 Baa-Baas players who stupidly and selfishly, and that is my opinion, I think fairly reasonable one, got the England Baa-Baas game called off in the autumn. There are various sanctions handed down. It kind of starts and ends for me when they went out not one night, 2 nights. There's various different groups. Honestly, read the whole thing. It's like a very bad book, because they start out saying they knew they didn't want to get challenged, so they left by the fire exit to avoid a confrontation. Lads, when that's your starting point, you know you're up to no good. And then they basically had an organized story to try and get out of it. And it's not good. It's really not good. There's a lot of players who are, there's some big names there. We know them all now. Run through the names. Boom, boom, boom. They're in different groups because they're different things. Alex Lewington, Fergus McFadden, Juan Pablo Socino, Chris Robshaw, Richard Wigglesworth, Jackson Ray, Callum Clark, Sean Maitland, Tim Swinson, and then a third group, Joe Kapoku, Manu Vunipola, and Tom de Glanville. There are various different things that are going on there, including telling fibs, including endangering a game, including breaking the agreement that you sign up to both as a professional player in England, within an England camp, and for the Baa-Baas game itself. Paul, we talked about this back when the whispers came out.
This is like the witches' trials in Salem. This is in the early 1700s. But that report is, you could tell how seriously they've taken it, though, because that report is in depth. This isn't they've had a slap on the wrist. This was, they broke it down into mass. I got bored after like 1.5 pages, but they took that really seriously. That was a big breach of confidence and insurance and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, they do. There's some other things that they take into effect. So they make sure that they call out that, for example, the casual workers on the day at Twickenham would have lost a combined total of X, and the players have committed to make sure that between them, they pool money to get that back. There's various things that were impacted like that they've said, okay, well, it's not mitigation, but it's something to be taken into account. But there's a lot of games going on, a lot of community service that is going to have to be served out over 2021.
Well, I was going to write a tiny point on it in my column, so they owe me about £4.
What is the monetary impact to the players? Is there money? Like, I think that's probably the most interesting thing that I think the fans want to know. Is there money coming out of the players' pockets to pay for this?
Hold on, caller. Yeah,
yeah, it is coming out of their pockets. I remember reading.
There's a number of there's a number of different things. There's playing suspensions. Okay, and that impacts different players differently. And in fact, Saracens, because there are so many Saracens players, as in both former but present Saracens players, they made the case that says they were playing for the Baa-Baas at the time, not Saracens. So if we have sort of 8 players out at the same time, that kind of restricts the way we can play. Could we actually spread them out? They considered this and said, actually, no, you can't. But the
sound like Saracens.
So where did I start this? Oh yeah. So we got playing suspensions. So 5 weeks. There's different levels here. Then we've got also some unpaid rugby community work to be completed before basically the end of 2021. That's a few different levels there. Total fines of 2 weeks' wages reduced from 4 weeks as a result of mitigation for various players. Interesting wrinkle here: Fergus McFadden, no longer a professional rugby player, and in a period of transition into a new career. That's a quote. In the circumstances, the panel will not impose a financial penalty on him, but he is supposed to do the unpaid rugby community work. So you'll read a lot more about this. It was a quick scan of the report. I'm glad they went hard. This was a pandemic. This was not to be trifled with.
You are right. I was being a little bit flippant earlier. It is quite a serious thing.
I don't know. I think it's so. I don't know. I agree, but I think it's. I don't know. I don't even know what my opinion is. It's just madness to think that many players. I mean, it's never been done before in that sense. So that's why it's just a bit of shock factor, a bit of wow factor. Is it right or wrong? I probably don't actually have enough.
Adam Redmond asked from behind the scenes, why didn't they just lock themselves in a function room at the hotel?
Get messed up. That's exactly that. Why wouldn't you do that? It said they had a bar there. Weren't they staying in the Grosvenor? Have you ever been to the Grosvenor? It's beautiful. It's one of the nicest hotels in the world.
Sean stroking his chin.
Look, as somebody who's been around groups of players who like to go out a lot, where there's a will, there's a way.
Give us some names, Ollie.
I've also learned there's no such thing as a mouse. Think about it.
Such thing as a mouse.
It's mice. It's not a mouse. It's mice, right? And I think they are not, after several beers, content with their own company in a function room in a hotel, because those young men who are of the single variety would rather go and, to coin a phrase, have a little look.
Yeah.
So okay, so
am I right, Dino?
Yeah, but and also I've heard,
yeah.
of course, I mean, yeah, but also in the fact I've heard that they were allowed out into cafes and they were allowed out into other things, and that the pub they were in, they had reserved their own private room where they had limited the exposure. Like, I don't know.
No. Hold on. Time out.
Is this the story? Is this the story?
Hang on, McGeady's going to geek out. Yeah.
No, I'm not even going to, because we're running out of time. Read the report, right? So night one was like, oh, let's get our own little table. It'll be grand, right? And they weren't allowed to do that anyway. But even if you left that there, night two pubs and a restaurant. You're kind of going,
call it a mini crawl.
Yeah, that's not good. And they had the rule of 6 on at the time, which, you know, we didn't have over here, but it was fairly well understood. Anyway, look, we have differing views. This is where I get to bring out the stocks. This is my part of shooting people. Dean shoots referees, I shoot the players. I like to keep it fair. Team of the decade. World Rugby announced this, along with a sponsor who, because they don't sponsor the show, I don't have to mention. It's fair to say, I think, that there were differing views on the team of the decade. I didn't even know this was coming, to be honest. But you know what? Why not?
It's tricky.
It's tricky. Gets people talking. That's part of the fun of these things.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
Yeah,
it's best not to worry too much about these things. There were some weird career overlaps there. Some players are in there, but you know, when they were finishing the season after, you know, Kieran Reid's the big omission.
Best player of the decade, hands down, and probably 2010 to 2020 filled it all.
Conor Murray doing in there?
Yeah, they're a weird overlay. Like Aaron Smith should have been in there, as far as I'm concerned.
Brian O'Driscoll retired in 2014.
There we go. You know, Brian O'Driscoll's one of my
in those 4 years. Then
he's one of my favorite ever players, right, Brian O'Driscoll. But I'm sure even he would say, you know, maybe Conrad Smith's career sort of was in that gap more than his. So it is tricky. You know, they've had to do it based on, you know, certain logistical things. But the one you couldn't argue with was player of the decade, which was McCaw.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, Jesus, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, anyway.
I'm not going to drain this one, but like, you know, this is the nice sort of chat what it's nice to have with your mates.
Yeah.
After you've seen a decent game, and you're just, someone puts it out there and you get the beer mats out and you're actually writing it down. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of conversation. I'm not sure there's not a lot of analysis we need to do with this one, Dean.
No. There were no England players in there.
Yeah, I was going to say Steve Lewis got nailed on. That's the only positive, I think. They had a great decade, didn't they? At least we got George North in there. Should have had Mellon in there and Sam Warburton, but there we are.
Yeah, it is. It's, I don't know. I can't get too excited about these things.
No, I know. They're tricky, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are.
Okay, we're going to, you know what?
It's impossible to do. It's like saying, you know, is Gareth Edwards as good as Mike Phillips was? Or, you know, you can't do it. You know, there's too many players, isn't there? What was it in that decade? New Zealand won 2 World Cups, was it?
Yeah. 11 and 15.
So I think we're due a couple of. It's like that's probably a good way to look at it. You look at what was the team, and then a couple of real nuggets around it, like a Pocock. You can't really argue with that. He was just such an outstanding player, a player who could single-handedly destroy an opposition game plan.
Yeah.
You don't go, oh, Sergio Parisse, he'd get in the All Blacks team. No, he wouldn't.
Not that, no.
No, he wouldn't. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
we move on because we're not going to drain this one. How did Reed miss out, Chiefs girl? Honestly, we don't know.
We've no
But
idea.
we shall see.
Don't know,
The concussion revelations. So this is what we've been
Oh.
speeding along to try and get to in this show, okay? Because this is important. And I think that coming back, if we look back at rugby in, say, 10, 15 years' time, this week will be a very important week,
Yes, it
because
will.
we have a group of ex-rugby union internationals essentially taking action for brain damage that they will attest they have had done to them during their careers, and the case will be made that there's a lack of duty of care by the governing body of the sport. So we will see echoes very much of what they went through in the NFL in the States. There was a large settlement paid to a lot of retired players then. We'll see what goes here, but there's key reporting done by The Guardian. I would direct you to Andy Bull's long piece on their site, as well as some very, very good videos featuring Steve Thompson, Alex Popham. I'll jump into a couple of quotes here because it really is worth your time. I can't impress on you enough. Thompson talking about the World Cup in 2003, where he was part of that famous England winning team. I can't even remember being in Australia. It's watching someone play that looked like me. I mean, that's just an extraordinary thing when you think of a man who's 42 years old, my age.
Yeah, think of that.
You know, Alex Popham didn't even realize that 90% of the concussions are when you're not knocked out. I mean, there is perhaps the huge significant difference between our understanding of it now and when Popham played, which is not a long time ago.
I think it hits home when if you do go to The Guardian or read or listen to their interviews, it's the current things. So Steve Thompson works on the tools, he's a tradesman, and he leaves his tools there, goes back, walks to another room, and then, where's my tools? That sort of thing. You know, Alex Popham had a near miss where I think he left the oven on, and his wife found the oven in flames or something, you know, because he'd panicked and he'd forgotten. And I coached Alex as a 17-year-old. I took him to South Africa for a World Students Tour, and you know, he played to his weight. You know, he carried the ball hard, put big hits in. A nicer bloke you wouldn't want to meet. I did a Q&A with him just last summer, and I didn't see any sort of signs. Always a pleasant boy, but to listen to him and watch him and hear him, and to be diagnosed with the early onset of dementia, which, as we all know, is obviously a deteriorating condition, at 42 or whatever he is, or 41, is just so sad, and a real wake-up call for everybody, I think, and parents in particular whose kids are playing, and those pushy ones who are getting them to do this, that, and the other, and coaches of young teams who are getting them to, you know, physically smash into one another or not coach them technically correct. It's just going to change the landscape, Andy, I think.
Yeah.
It really
Do
is.
you know, the big thing I'm hoping for is that a lot of ex-players who are in now with very important media roles take this on. So I think half of the rugby community's already realised how serious this was 5 seasons ago. So it's almost like the COVID lag between infection and hospitalisation. So a lot of people have realised this was happening, and now this is the bit where you get the actual stats of who's got it. And today's articles have been those stats. You know, I won't mention a name, but to listen to a certain Australian commentator last weekend talking about high tackles and cleanouts, that there was play acting, and that, you know, they weren't entirely convinced that it was a high shot. That's got to go, right? That is now no longer just being biased and wanting your country to win. That's really negligent and stupid. So if anyone on TV now says, "Oh, the game's gone soft," you know, you need to be told off. That is negligent, right? And I'm hoping now from this point on, when you hear players who did play in the 80s, when, you know, centres were 11 stone and not 16 stone, there needs to be a realisation now that this is really, really serious. So that's the one thing I want to change from today.
Yeah, I agree that my fear of all of this is that what can change. I like it, what you're saying is great, Paul, and completely acknowledge it. The stigma around the context and things like that needs to be acknowledged, but you lose the game. The game can't change. I think the amount of knockouts and concussions that happen, they're not coming from fights nowadays. They're not coming from intentional headbutts or elbows. They're literally just coming from unfortunate incidents,
collisions,
which is the game, and that's the hardest thing about it. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I feel so sorry for these guys of what they're going through, but I'm not sure what if their outcome is to bring awareness to it, then great. If it's if they're looking for someone to blame, I don't know who you blame, because that's the game that we're playing. Unfortunately, it's a contact sport with no protection, and there's no way to get protection.
So I'll jump in just as part of that, because I think it's important. So one of the things which Alex Popham said was that he wants to be part of the solution to make rugby safer, and just simply his point of view, he doesn't want to see a player playing now that when they retire, they get the same diagnosis of early onset dementia that he's had. So the sentiment there is more, let's fix this and keep the game, as opposed to we want someone to blame. Now, there are only a couple of these players who've come out publicly as part of this. They've said that there is close on 100 people overall as part of this. It's a very big deal, and we'll see where it goes. And then the other point you're making, I think, is very important. People misunderstand how the brain gets damaged. I'm not a doctor. We've read a lot of things about it, but the term subconcussive blows, you're going to read a lot about it when it comes to this. It's where football, soccer has had to really have a look at itself when they look at the damage done to players who are around in the days of heavy, wet pitches and a very heavy leather ball, and those repeated blows in the head from simply heading the ball. When they first started trying to measure concussion in the States, they found out that they had to be very careful about how they measured it, because even if you had, let's say, all those linemen running into each other all the time, they're not knocking each other out. It's that repeated blow, play after play. That's a subconcussive blow. Even when you say, okay, let's put microchips into gum shields and whatever to pick these things up. Well, you know, when a quarterback makes a big play, or a running back, and now all the big guys come over and they smack him on the head, you know, that little center picks all that up. Your brain is rattling around even through those little things. Like, it's crazy the amount of things. And as Dean says, the game is violent by its nature. So what impact is that going to have? Sean, we kind of don't know.
No, we don't. And it's a bit like saying you can't punch to the head in boxing, you know? So what do? Do we just punch the body? And if you don't have heading in football, you haven't got football, have you? Because you play tippy-tappy and you play five-a-side on a big pitch. You can't play crosses, long ball. So I think it's more about understanding, awareness, which is what these boys are doing, which might have a detrimental effect of people taking up the game. We have to bear that into mind, that could happen. But I think it's more, you know, listen to Alex. I think it's more about the screening and identification earlier, rather than Alex, a retired rugby player in his early 40s, and he's been diagnosed the early onset of dementia. If these boys if there's funding available to be screened to identify that they're at high risk, or they have had a blow, and that is it. You are done at 25. That is it now for the, you know, and that's the worst you're going to get. But, you know, I think that is more where it's at. And that's why I say the landscape is going to change, because we have to be accepting of that. It's no good saying then, oh, I've had a couple of blows now and I'm all right. I feel okay. No, the science and the screening is telling you one more or a couple more, and that's it.
And it's
So
bad. But
I think that's more where it's got ahead, I think.
I think the other thing is that at least now there's science to back up some possible law changes. So, for instance, those ridiculous flying cleanouts that you see in rucks that still happen every week. People off their feet, torpedo cleaning people out in the side. There's no need for that. You know, if players as big as Dean, right, if they stay on their feet, if you can't move them, you can't move them, right? They retain the ball. You know, if it's like there's this weird, I chatted on Twitter about it on the weekend, and someone said, well, how are you supposed to remove to some... If that was the case, you just run up and kick them in the head. If you have to remove them, just run up and pour acid in their face. That's not the game. If you can't move them, you can't move them. You don't get the ball. They get to keep the ball. You have to get there faster.
There's a game within the game, though, Paul. Even if Dean arrives late to a jackal over the ball, he's going to make him know that if he goes there again next time, he's coming again.
No, I know,
but that's where does the word negligence come into it? As a coach, are you being negligent if you say, hey, listen, if he's locked on the ball, don't clean him out, because if I encourage you to do that, then I'm liable. That's where it becomes a really grey zone, because then you just can't risk. It's just a snowball effect of risk.
And the other way around, the other way around, you go in. I did it because the coach told me to do it.
Exactly, and then that's no good for anyone, because I'm a player trying to succeed, and the coach is trying to succeed, and it's such a hard thing to do in the sport we're in. It really is.
So don't forget that this, where this legal action will go, will not be directed towards individuals. It will be directed towards the game's overall custodians, shall we say? So where the NFL, so where the NFL got themselves into trouble a long time ago is because they I'm trying to be very, very careful about how we put these things, but I think it's fair to say that there was a difference between what they knew and what they were willing to accept, right, publicly, in terms of how dangerous the game really was. So a player could, if they were just going by what their organization was telling them, and the organization meaning the umbrella body for the game, this is fine. There's, it's just another sport, and it patently wasn't. And they had the retired people who were punch drunk to that. And maybe this is where we are in rugby. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is a very small section of unlucky players. We don't know that, but I think we're at a crossroads moment. And we're going to pick this up again, folks, when more details come about this. We will move on. Oh yeah, sorry, Adam Redmond in the background. Useful comment. Watch the Will Smith movie on Concussion. Yeah, and the original book.
Concussion.
Yeah, and the original book was good. What was it? Game of Shadows. Am I right?
Don't read, like Paul says.
Not me.
No, not sure.
I'm a big fan of it.
No, let's move on to something a little bit more fun. It's a question came in from AMO Rugby directly before the pod. Please ask Paul. These are all for you, Paul.
Christ.
Is Eddie O'Sullivan right that Scotland have notions? Do you know what the term notions is?
Yeah, like notions of grandeur, I presume, is it? Yeah, I saw that little clip. He's kind of right, I suppose, but then kind of wrong, because Scotland have played really well. They won 6 on the bounce. They've got a good squad. I know what he's saying. It's the false dawns, isn't it? Wales had loads of them in the early 2000s. He's probably right and wrong.
All right. Speaking of, will any Welsh sides win in Europe this weekend?
No.
Okay, let's
I don't think they will. No.
Bats, Scarlets,
on that.
Dragons, Wasps.
Dragons might.
Newcastle, Cardiff, Ospreys, Cast.
Dragons will have a chance, I think. If we're back at 2 wins coming home, I've watched Wasps the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they're not
actually
great.
I don't want to diss another league too much, but I haven't seen an entertaining English Premiership match this season yet. I've not seen one.
It's funny you mention that.
That'll be on Media Wales.
A lot of people.
I'm not watching the right ones. Maybe that's all.
It's a lot of people enjoyed that Bristol Northampton game.
Really? That's one I watched. I didn't enjoy that. And then the one before was Newcastle Sale. I can't get that time back.
Okay.
Newcastle. To be fair to Newcastle, they've started really well, though.
Yeah, they have.
That's they're playing really well. Fair play.
Okay, we'll rattle through. We're not going to spend any time on these at all, but Champions Cup fixtures coming up this weekend. Ulster, Toulouse on the Friday. This is only the ones featuring Guinness PRO14 sides. Bath Scarlets, Montpellier, Leinster, Dragons, Wasps, Edinburgh, La Rochelle on the Saturday. On the Sunday, Racing, Connacht, Exeter, Glasgow, Munster, Harlequins. In the Challenge Cup, we have Stade Benetton, Newcastle, Cardiff, Zebre, Bayonne, Ospreys, Castra. And no, I am not going into explaining how the Champions Cup format works.
Never do that again. I tell you what, Glasgow won't be wanting to play Exeter. I'll tell you that.
No, they won't.
It doesn't matter, Owen.
Everyone say a prayer for Leo Cullen this weekend, trying to pick a Leinster back row. No, that is a good problem to have, my friend.
You just get like Paul. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. They're all good.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Kaiser Lintasan.
That's one for Dean.
Hi, I'm from Philippines. Can you shout out? Yes, we can. Hello. Didn't know we're big in the Philippines.
Hi, Kaiser.
Any more? Chiefs girl. I think most teams rebuild after the Rugby World Cup. Even New Zealand were average this year. Remember, this is New Zealander. Average means shit if you're a New Zealander, right?
Yeah.
You know what? That is such a good point, though, because I remember South Africa 12 months out from that last World Cup, right? And they were dreadful. They were getting pumped by 40 points. Dean, tell you what, you're lucky that was under the title. Christ, we'll all be up in front of the peak.
Just had a mosquito on my arm.
12 months, 12 months, a long time in Test rugby. You just need to look at the box. So she's absolutely right there, Chiefs girl.
Okay, Harley Worthy, have you guys seen the new Zebra Europe kit?
It's a beauty.
It's lovely. It's beautiful.
It's the sort of thing Paul Williams would wear on his own, sat in his tennis racket room.
Yeah, just looking in a mirror.
Christian Hyde, Sean, will Ashton Hewitt get called up for the Six Nations?
Well, if he continues scoring tries and playing, I mean, I called it pre-season, didn't I, that this kid is close to it. We just got so many good ends, Lewis Rees-Zammit showed up okay, apart from Italy going round him for that try, but he's done okay. Josh Adams has been brilliant for the last 2 years. George moving to the centre, if that's his future, that could open the door for Ashton Hewitt. So let's hope so.
It'll be one of three. It'll be Owen Lane, there's Jonah Holmes, and then Ashton Hewitt. Sort of one of those three, I suppose, isn't it?
Jamie Phillips, a mention for 19-year-old lock Ben Carter on debut, or if you've been watching Aussie commentators, on debut for the Dragons.
Yeah,
made 31 tackles, didn't miss a single one. Big shift.
Brilliant.
Dragons needing a solid lock to kind of get their engine room going. Maybe he could be the future. Who knows?
Yeah. He played well.
Ask Andy Powell, boys. Yes, this is definitely a reference to sometimes players needing to sneak out of wherever they are, to sneak out of wherever they are.
We have not got time for my Andy Powell stories.
So I don't think we've got the time or the legal budget, my friend.
No, we haven't.
Redmond 4000, is that what Paul Williams looks like? My imagination needs talking to.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
There's more in that one.
What does that mean? Hang on, he's one of the Russians.
It's not what he really looks like, because he's just got ridiculously dyed facial hair and
did it again today just for you, Mr. H. To keep away the ageist abuse.
I'm not on Penderyn whiskey. I'm not. Penderyn whiskey is big in Japan, by the way, as well. It's fine Welsh whiskey. I'm drinking Fernet, which is a very popular drink in Argentina. It's in celebration of their performance in the championship. I think they did brilliantly. They finished above the Wallabies, didn't they?
Yeah.
2 draws and a win over the All Blacks.
And really annoyed everyone by having 2 draws. Yeah.
Fernet is horrible, by the way. For anyone who's never drunk from it is terrible stuff.
Howell Davis waiting for Adam to put up a headline. Holly says Premiership
never said
is
that.
rubbish. he didn't. You didn't literally say it.
It is what he meant.
I've been watching the wrong games.
Yeah, he's watching the wrong games. It's good. Dean Budd's comments do not represent those of the general rugby public. Yeah, pretty bad.
I've not said anything bad tonight, have I? I don't think so.
At all.
Still time.
Still time.
We've got a minute left, Dino.
Yeah. No, there's not. That's a wrap. Thank you, Dean Budd. Thank you, Sean Holley. Thank you, Paul Williams. Thank you to everyone in the comments section who's come along to join us for the evening. And if you're listening back, thanks for listening. We do appreciate it. That was Under the Sticks, brought to you by Pro14 Rugby. We'll be back next week after some Champions Cup action, looking back at the weekend that was and looking forward to the next round. My name's Andy McGeady. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
They call me cheetah, cheetah, cheetah. Ooh, ka-chaka, cheetah, cheetah, cheetah. Allah, mama, cheetah, cheetah, cheetah.